Imagine firing a third of your workforce,
Right.
right? Just to replace them with this shiny new AI system.
Right.
And then you realize months later that the AI is basically breaking your business. So you have to go back and, beg those exact same humans to come back.
Yeah, it sounds like a nightmare, honestly.
It really does.
Yeah.
But according to this staggering new study by Robert Half, that is exactly what over 30% of U.S. hiring managers are doing right now.
Wow. 30%.
Yeah, 30%. They cut jobs to replace them with artificial intelligence, and they've already had to reinstate those exact roles or, very similar ones. And it actually doesn't stop there.
Oh, there's more.
Oh, yeah. Gartner is now predicting that by 2027, literally 50% of all companies that cut their customer service staff in favor of AI will be forced to rehire them. Okay, let's unpack this because that is a massive multi-billion-dollar course correction.
Oh, absolutely. It's huge.
Right? So today, we're taking a deep dive into Dr. Jonathan H. Westover's comprehensive research synthesis, and it's titled, AI Layoffs Are Backfiring.
It really is a phenomenal course correction. I mean, for you listening to this deep dive right now, if you've been following the AI trend, the data we are about to explore is likely going to serve as, well, pure vindication.
Totally.
Because beyond just validating what, a lot of workers suspected all along, this research provides a real strategic roadmap. It breaks down the actual mechanical reasons why this push to just replace human judgment with automated decisions, why it just collapsed under its own weight.
Yeah.
And it shows how smart organizations are now frantically scrambling to rebuild the very human capabilities that they discarded.
Right, because to really understand why 30% of these companies are furiously backpedaling, we first have to look at the fundamental misunderstanding that caused them to fire these workers in the first place. So take us back to that 2023-2024 hype cycle. You had companies across tech, finance, media, professional services just aggressively shedding jobs. And they weren't, quietly doing it, right?
No, not at all.
They were explicitly citing artificial intelligence as the reason.
Yeah, and we have to draw a sharp line right away between these AI-justified layoffs and traditional corporate restructuring.
Right, because they're very different.
Completely different. Usually when a company restructures, it's this grim necessity, like revenue is declining or the market is shrinking.
Sure.
But these AI-justified layoffs, they were driven by this incredibly aggressive assumption about how technology works. Executives were basically looking at generative AI and these automated decision tools and making a massive bet on substitution.
Right.
There's this fascinating breakdown by researchers Brynjolfsson and McAfee. They split technology adoption into two distinct buckets. You've got complementary and substitutive.
Okay, break that down for us.
So complementary tech augments human ability. Think of like a power drill for a carpenter, right? It just makes you faster.
Yeah, you still need the carpenter to know where to put the hole.
Exactly. Yeah. But substitutive tech attempts to completely replace human judgment, and corporate leadership heavily and mistakenly bet on substitution.
Which, that feels like a fundamental misunderstanding of what the technology was actually doing.
It really was.
Deploying AI as a total substitute it's like trying to drive a car on a winding mountain road, but you're only looking in your rearview mirror.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Because the AI is, incredibly efficient at processing where you've been the historical training data, right? But it has absolutely no contextual judgment for the sudden, unprecedented roadblock ahead.
Right, it just keeps hitting the gas based on what happened yesterday.
Exactly. Which brings me to the million-dollar question, right? Why did highly paid, highly educated executives fall for this? Why did they ignore the early warnings that were almost certainly coming from their own frontline employees?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the answer lies in this messy intersection of boardroom psychology and just crushing financial pressure.
Yeah.
The research points heavily to sunk cost dynamics. So picture a corporate leadership team, right? They just invested, say, $50 million into this massive enterprise AI infrastructure.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
When you make an investment that large, the pressure from shareholders and the board to demonstrate an immediate return on investment is absolute. It's intense.
So they just have to prove it's working no matter what.
Exactly. And this created a corporate culture where bad news was actively suppressed. Middle managers, frontline workers, the people who actually tried to wave red flags about what the technology could and couldn't do, they feared for their careers if they spoke up.
So they just started telling leadership what they wanted to hear.
Essentially, yes. Instead of looking at actual operational performance, leadership celebrated these vanity metrics.
Vanity metrics? Like
Yeah.
what?
Like, they looked at a dashboard showing how many interactions a customer service chatbot could process per hour, and they applauded the speed, you know?
I see.
But what they weren't measuring was whether the customer's complex problem was actually solved or if the customer just hung up in sheer frustration.
Right. And that brings us perfectly from the boardroom fantasies right down to the front lines. Because when those humans left the building, the operations actually broke.
Oh, it totally broke down.
To understand this, we need to talk about something called tacit knowledge, which the source material highlights as basically the biggest casualty of these layoffs.
Yeah, tacit knowledge is huge.
Right. It's the stuff you know how to do, but you can't really easily write down in a manual. It's like reading the room during a tense negotiation, or knowing when a client is hesitating on a Zoom call, even though they're technically saying yes.
Right. It's that human intuition.
Exactly. It's relationship capital and contextual judgment. Let's look at the finance sector for a second to see what happens when you strip that out.
Yeah, the finance sector is a perfect case study in how losing tacit knowledge just creates a disaster.
Right.
So banks decided to deploy AI for underwriting and loan approvals. They assumed the algorithms could crunch the financial data faster and, more objectively than human analysts.
Which sounds good on paper, right?
On paper, yes. But here is the mechanism of how it failed. An algorithm might automatically approve a massive commercial loan for a business because their recent cash flow over the last 12 months looks incredible on a spreadsheet.
Right.
It perfectly matches the training data for a quote-unquote good loan.
But wait, a human underwriter would instantly recognize that the business's main supplier just went bankrupt last week.
Yeah.
Meaning the cash flow is about to completely dry up next month.
Precisely the point. AI optimizes purely for historical data. It doesn't read the news, and it doesn't understand broader economic context.
Wow.
So the AI approved bad loans that human analysts would have instantly flagged based on nuanced compliance risks that just weren't perfectly coded into the system.
That's terrifying for a bank.
And at the exact same time, the algorithms were aggressively rejecting applications from highly creditworthy customers.
Just because they didn't fit the mold.
Exactly. Their unique circumstances simply didn't match the historical training data. The algorithms lacked the contextual judgment to look at a unique financial situation, weigh the abstract factors, and say, wait, this actually makes sense.
Man. And that inability to read context, it isn't just a numbers problem in finance, is it?
No, not at all.
Because when you apply that same rigid pattern matching to something inherently subjective, like, writing and media, the results are arguably even worse.
Oh, much worse in some ways.
Yeah, media companies fired editors and writers, assuming generative AI could just pump out endless equivalent content.
And they found out very quickly that their shiny new AI-produced content that was either factually inaccurate or just incredibly generic.
Right, it reads like a robot wrote it.
Exactly. It lacked the editorial judgment that distinguishes a quality publication, knowing what stories actually matter to a specific cultural moment, or how to contextualize complex, unfolding information.
Which completely wiped out the supposed cost savings.
Yeah.
Because they had to go and hire people just to fix all the AI's mistakes.
Yeah, that's the irony of the whole situation. The AI-generated content required so much heavy human editing to just make it readable and accurate that the promised efficiencies vanished entirely.
Wow.
And on a broader scale, companies across the board experienced this severe innovation stagnation.
What do you mean by that?
Well, by cutting diverse human perspectives, eliminating cross-functional collaborators, and basically just relying on pattern-matching algorithms, their product pipelines narrowed.
Because the AI can't invent something truly new.
Exactly. They stopped creating breakthrough ideas, and they were reduced to just making tiny incremental improvements based on what had already worked in the past.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure, go for it.
Aren't these just growing pains? I mean, we hear constantly about how fast AI is advancing, right? How many parameters the new models have.
Right, the models are getting huge.
So if the AI just gets fed more training data, won't it eventually learn those nuances? Won't it develop the emotional intelligence needed to handle these complex tasks without the humans?
It's a very common assumption, and it's actually exactly the argument that many executives use to defend those initial layoffs.
Right.
But it fundamentally misunderstands the mechanics of how these algorithms function. There's this fascinating study by researchers Hong and Rust that's cited in the material, and it proves this point perfectly.
Oh, really? What did they find?
They found that AI handles routine, stable tasks adequately. But catastrophic failures consistently occur during complex, unprecedented inquiries.
Because it can't improvise.
Exactly. Human qualities, things like ethical reasoning, cultural intelligence, and the creative recombination of knowledge, they are not just complex data points that an algorithm can eventually ingest if you just feed it enough spreadsheets.
Yeah.
They are dynamic, highly contextual traits.
Because the world isn't a closed system. The rules are, they're always changing.
Right. An algorithm optimizes based on the past, but human judgment adapts to the unprecedented.
So true.
You simply cannot automate tacit knowledge because tacit knowledge is generated in real time in response to unique human situations.
That makes total sense. So let's look at the fallout then. The companies realize their operations are breaking down. Customer satisfaction is tanking, loans are defaulting, articles are filled with errors.
A total mess.
Total mess. They try to hit the undo button. But rehiring humans isn't like rebooting a server. I mean, humans have memory, they have agency, and frankly, they have justified anger.
Oh, absolutely.
The psychological toll on the workers who went through this, it's just devastating to read about.
It really is. The research delves deeply into the identity disruption and the skill devaluation anxiety these workers experienced.
Right.
Imagine investing decades into developing specialized expertise, only to be told by your employer that a chatbot can do your job better and cheaper.
It's insulting.
It's deeply insulting. And even when you are rehired months later, which, yes, it validates that you were right all along, the damage is already done.
Yeah, you don't forget that.
No, you don't. Workers face the financial vulnerability of forced career pivots, exhausting their savings, or just accepting underemployment just to survive.
And it creates a massive structural problem for the future of these industries, too, because these layoffs didn't impact everyone equally, right?
Right, that's a crucial point. It disproportionately impacted underrepresented groups, mid-career professionals who had accumulated highly valuable but, hard to quantify tacit knowledge, and early career workers.
The early career part feels huge.
It is critical because those entry-level roles that were automated away, they typically serve as the training ground for future experts.
Right. You learn the ropes by doing the routine stuff first.
Exactly. By wiping those out, companies effectively destroyed their own talent pipeline for the next decade.
Wow. And that brings up a critical concept from the research called procedural justice.
Yes.
It's the idea that workers evaluate not just the outcome of a decision, but the fairness of the actual process. Workers felt deeply that they were treated as disposable testing grounds for failed automation experiments.
Which is exactly what happened.
Right. I mean, it's like dumping a loyal partner for a flashy new prospect, realizing it was a massive mistake, and then just expecting them to happily take you back with no apology.
Yeah, that is a perfect analogy. Or firing your longtime general contractor mid-build because you bought a fancy automated hammer.
Oh, yeah.
Then you realize the house is actively collapsing because the hammer doesn't know how to pour a foundation.
Right.
And then you just demand the contractor come back and fix the mess for the exact same rate.
They aren't going to do it, or they're going to charge a massive premium.
Exactly, and the current reality reflects that. The data shows many workers are simply refusing to return to the companies that fired them.
Good for them, honestly.
Yeah, and these organizations are now having to pay huge premiums to attract new talent and rebuild team cohesion completely from scratch.
So how are companies actually navigating this incredibly awkward reconciliation?
Well, this raises an important question because it requires a massive rebuilding of organizational trust. Trust in leadership has suffered profound, lasting damage here.
Oh, no doubt.
For companies to successfully rehire, vague PR reassurances are completely ineffective. If leadership just puts out a memo saying, oh, market conditions change, so we are expanding our team, the workers see right through it.
Oh, yeah. Nobody believes that.
The research makes it clear that successful recovery requires transparent acknowledgement of the miscalculation.
They have to own the mistake.
They have to own it publicly. Leaders have to explicitly admit what drove their initial assumptions, what specific operational outcomes revealed those assumptions were flawed, and what specific changes they are making to their governance moving forward.
So since throwing AI at the wall didn't work and begging the original workers to return is proving very difficult, let's look at the roadmap. How are the smart companies actually fixing this mess? The source material provides some fantastic evidence-based case studies of organizations correcting course effectively.
Yeah, there are some good examples.
I was looking at the Duolingo example in the research. They initially cut their human content creation staff, believing generative AI could easily produce language learning materials.
Right, and they quickly received terrible user feedback.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. The AI-generated exercises lacked cultural nuance, the difficulty progression was totally uneven, and frankly, the engaging, fun elements of the app, the quirky sentences and the personality, it just disappeared.
Right. But what I love about their response is that instead of doubling down and forcing the AI to try and be funny, Duolingo's leadership openly admitted that human creativity and pedagogical expertise were essential.
Which is rare, but so important.
It is. They rebuilt their human content teams to work alongside the AI tools, communicating openly with their stakeholders about what they actually learned. It was a perfect example of shifting from substitution back to complementarity.
That shift to complementarity is absolutely vital, and a great mechanical example of how to actually structure that comes from Shopify.
Oh, yeah.
Their approach to workflow redesign is basically the gold standard for how to integrate this technology without breaking your business. They mapped out what's called a granular task analysis.
Okay, granular task analysis. Break down exactly how that works for us step by step.
So instead of looking at a whole job title, say a customer support agent, and asking, can AI do this job? They broke the job down into dozens of specific granular tasks.
Okay, makes sense.
They realized that resetting a password, checking an account balance, or explaining a basic return policy, those are highly routine tasks. AI handles those beautifully.
Sure.
But diagnosing a complex technical glitch where a merchant's storefront goes offline during a massive sale, that requires empathy, rapid troubleshooting, and deep contextual understanding of the merchant's business.
Right, so they essentially filtered the workflow.
Yes. The AI acts as the frontline filter for the high-volume routine work. But Shopify reserved their human staff for the complex problems. And crucially, they gave the human workers override authority.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, if a human agent looks at an AI recommendation and their contextual judgment tells them the algorithm is missing a crucial piece of the puzzle, the human has the final say. They are the pilot, not just a passenger.
That override authority is so key, it preserves the tacit knowledge.
Exactly.
And what about preventing these disasters before they happen? I know the United Airlines case study really highlights how to spot a failure early rather than waiting for the whole system to collapse.
Right. United Airlines implemented an AI customer service system, but instead of just launching it and walking away, they built an active early warning system.
Active early warning systems.
Yeah. This means they audited the system continuously with real human oversight. When they noticed that the AI was deeply frustrating their high-value frequent flyers, for example, a flyer trying to rebook a complex multi-city itinerary after a weather cancellation, they didn't wait for a quarterly review.
They caught it right away.
Yes, they adjusted the system immediately.
And they needed the frontline workers to point that out, right?
Exactly, which is why they protected the feedback channels.
Oh, that's crucial.
It is. They made it safe for frontline workers to report that the AI was failing without fear of retaliation. They didn't let ego or the sunk cost fallacy get in the way of the data, and they fixed the workflows before a total operational meltdown occurred.
That is smart. Finally, let's look at Salesforce, because their approach to the human element, that procedural justice we discussed earlier, is really noteworthy for when a company actually does make a misstep.
Yeah, Salesforce is an interesting case. When they realized they had over-indexed on AI and cut too deeply, they demonstrated true institutional learning. Well, they offered enhanced severance packages, equity vesting acceleration, and even alumni networking support to help displaced workers find new roles.
Wow, that's actually stepping up.
It is. Most importantly, leadership took public responsibility for the miscalculation instead of just, scapegoating the economy. By handling the exit respectfully and owning the error, they preserved their reputation.
Right.
So when they eventually needed to rehire for those complex roles, that talent was actually willing to pick up the phone.
Because they didn't burn the bridge.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I mean, if you were sitting at your desk right now watching your company roll out a new AI initiative, how can you advocate for these complementary workflows in your own office before a disastrous layoff happens to you or your team?
Well, the most strategic move you can make right now is to relentlessly emphasize your irreplaceable contributions.
Okay, give us an example.
Document and highlight the moments where your creative problem solving, your ethical reasoning, and your relationship management saved a project or solved a complex client issue. Furthermore, you need to actively advocate within your organization for what organizational researchers call distributed leadership.
Distributed leadership. Okay, how does a listener actually do that in a meeting without sounding like they are just, complaining about new technology?
Yeah, you need a tangible workplace-ready script. Next time your boss brings up a new AI tool, don't just push back defensively. Ask them specifically, which specific contextual decisions are we removing from the human team with this tool, and what is our early warning system if the AI misjudges the context?
Oh, that's a brilliant framing.
Right. This framing shifts the conversation from a turf war to a strategic discussion about risk management.
Yeah.
It positions you as a critical thinker looking out for the company's operational reality, rather than just forcing teams to blindly follow centralized algorithmic dashboards. If your company is piloting AI, volunteer to be part of the review committee.
Be in the room.
Yes, be the voice that asks, what specific human capabilities are we losing if we automate this step?
That is incredibly actionable. We've covered a ton of ground today, but the core takeaway from Dr. Westover's research is crystal clear. The AI hype cycle of 2023 and 2024 proved undeniably that you cannot automate tacit knowledge and human judgment.
Absolutely cannot.
That 30% rehiring wave,
Yeah.
that is total validation for the workforce. Your skills were never obsolete. Your expertise was never inferior to an algorithm. You were just, temporarily misunderstood by executives who are chasing a shiny trend instead of looking at the mechanics of how work actually gets done.
Beautifully said. And for you, the learner, constantly absorbing new information and expanding your skill set, this is your moment.
Yeah.
As organizations scramble to rebuild the institutional memory they lost, your ability to synthesize complex information, spot the patterns that aren't obvious, and apply deep contextual judgment that is quite literally your greatest strategic advantage in the modern economy.
Definitely.
Algorithms optimize the known past. You navigate the complex future.
I love that. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We've seen that human, contextual judgment and tacit knowledge have proven to be the absolute hardest things in the corporate world to replace, right?
No doubt.
If that's true, are we about to witness a massive corporate arms race? Instead of companies just blindly stockpiling GPUs and computing power, will the next decade actually be defined by a frantic, high-bidding war to stockpile human critical thinkers?
Now, that is a fascinating thought.
Something to think about. Until next time, keep digging deeper.